this earth, and people like George Bush and all of the other fascist, Nazi, underworld, mafiosi murderers are going to bite the dust. You can bet on it. God has watched the coming and going of Hitler's for thousands of years, and it hasn't impressed him a bit. And the people that are running this government today, they're on their way out too, very soon. Personal liberty. Personal liberty is severely limited under a fascist government. Here is a fascist. You'll see it underneath. It's everywhere throughout the world, especially in South America, Italy, France, Italy again, Benito Mussolini. You'll see the fasci. Fascism of Italian domination. Here's Kurt Waldheim, fascist Nazi, ended up being the head of the United Nations. I don't know what that tells you about the UN. And here's the Pope with his fascist Nazi friend. Both of them are grinning because they both know what they're doing, and they know you don't know what they're doing. And that's why they're both smiling. I put the Pope in the same place with Adolf Hitler and the other fascist Nazis. I know. I've done 42 years of research on the Roman system of fascism, Nazism, and I can tell you the papacy is the bottom line if you want to talk about fascism. Why does the Pope wear a Jewish yarmulke? You ever thought about that? Where's the Jewish yarmulke? Why? Here at the Vatican, Cardinal Pacelli, who later became Pope Pius XII, he signs a concordance. Eugenio Pacelli, now Vatican Secretary of State, presides over the signing of a concordat between Germany and the Vatican in 1933. The Vatican signed contracts with the Nazis. There were two of them. They were called concordances. Now, how many people know that? The Pope signs contracts with Adolf Hitler. Here's Benito Mussolini in the Vatican signing contracts with the Vatican. Again, here's another cardinal meeting with all of the fascists on the left. Here are the priests hailing Hitler. Here's Pacelli. Now here's the Cardinal Nuncio, Papal Nuncio in Germany, talking to Adolf Hitler. Again, the fasci. Here it is on American coins, the fasci. Here it is in Rome. Take a good look at the fasci on that symbol. Here it is in America. Here it is on the American dime. It's a traditional symbol of republicanism, a fasci as its symbol. You know, Republicans have always used the fasci because they crawl on their knees before the Pope and the Mafia. You see on both sides of the podium, fascis. That's a fasci. And you'll see it with the President and on both sides of the podium. We can have the lights now. So in conclusion, let me say that what I'm trying to do is alert you and make you aware of the fact that the entire world operates on symbols, words, terms, emblems, national coats of arms, halotry, flags. And for many years I have been fascinated with how much Americans don't know about symbols, and they look at them every day. They haven't got the faintest idea what these things mean. The religious institutions that govern the Western world are as corrupt as any institution that's ever come out of the Western world. But I believe that there is a very powerful story encoded symbolically in the Old and New Testament but it has been misrepresented. And unless and until we are ready to accept that fact, that there's something in the New Testament that you don't know. There's a symbolism there that's telling you something. And I am fascinated with how much we read things and don't know what we're reading. Let me give you one last example that I think is important and will make the point. On the first day of summer, the sun is as high in the northern sky as it's going to get. It's not going any further north than the first day of summer. It is directly overhead, as high in the northern hemisphere as it's going to get. Each day, from the first day of summer, each day it moves imperceptibly. It moves 1 degree southward each day, going southward. When it hits the halfway point, it is now crossing over the equator at the halfway point, and now it is going to fall. And that's why we call it fall or autumn. Fall, because the sun is now falling. It's going. And consequently, it keeps moving until it hits the halfway point, which it crosses over the equator. Now it is the spring in the southern equator, and in the northern hemisphere, it is now fall, coming of winter. But as I said, in Rio and in Brazil, it is now spring, because it's going to go 3 more months until it hits the first day of winter. And the first day of winter, the sun is as low in the southern sky as it's going to get. And that's the first day of summer for Rio. That's why the birds and smart people with money fly south. If you got money, you go south, follow the sun, right? So consequently, the sun, which was doing just fine, it was really hot and doing great, and then when it reached the halfway point, the constellation that it hits every fall is the constellation of Scorpio. Scorpio is the constellation that begins autumn, and therefore it's this kiss of death. The scorpion has kissed God's son, and now he's going to be led to his death in Capricorn. He's going to die. He is fallen. The great Son of God is fallen, and he's going to fall all the way down to the southern hemisphere until it hits the first day of winter, which is December 22nd. Yes. On December 22nd, the sun rises on the lowest latitude, on the lowest point in the southern sky. Now follow what I'm saying. The sun rises on the lowest degree on the 22nd. On the 23rd, the sun rises on the same identical degree. It's so perceptive, the U.S. Navy has the instruments to tell you. It did not move 1 degree south. It did not move 1 degree north. It's on the same identical degree. On the 24th, it rises, and it's still on the same identical degree. Therefore, the ancient Egyptians knew that, and they said God's son was dead for 3 days. But on the 4th day, which is December 25th, United States Navy devices will tell you that the sun moved 1 degree northward. 1 small degree northward. It's just enough, because the ancient people said anything that was dead for 3 days and has just moved 1 degree northward is born again. It's come back to life. Now it is on its way back to the northern hemisphere. And consequently, when it gets to the next quarter point, which is spring, and at spring it crosses back over the equator, on its way back to, coming back to full grown and full into the northern hemisphere. Consequently, when you die today, we say the same thing the ancient Egyptians said. When someone dies, we say, grandmother passed last night, grandfather passed away, or uncle passed on. Always the word associated with death in the ancient world was passed. You passed last night. Grandmother passed on. But in the Egyptian, they said that when you died, you left from one world and went into another world. So you passed over into a next world. So when you died, they said, grandfather passed over last night. And I've even heard that term, grandmother passed over last night. Why? Because the sun, which was brilliant in the summer, it hit at halfway point, it crossed over the equator, so it passed over the equator going to the full summer in the southern hemisphere. In the spring, it's coming back and it passes over the equator again, coming back. And in the ancient world, there was a celebration in the northern hemisphere because the sun, which was dead in winter, has been reborn on December 25th and has now come back to life. And they called it the Passover. So that the Passover is nothing more than the sun passing over the equator. The Passover. Okay? So consequently, when you're, it's a very holy, the Passover. What are you talking about? Sun worship, airhead? Wake up. That's all it is. It's just worship of the sun passing over. And so consequently, the Passover happens on the first week of spring. Well, isn't that strange? That it would happen in the first week of spring. Now, of course, Christians would not want to have anything to do with this because this is the Jewish celebration of the Passover. So Christians wouldn't have anything to do with that. But we're still going to be worshiping the sun, but let's say that instead of the Passover, let's say that God's Son is, say, resurrected. Let's say he's resurrected and has come back to life. Well, the Son has been resurrected, has passed over. And so Christians go out on the first day of Easter, Ishtar, and have an Easter sunrise service. Why? Because that's all it is sun worship. You're worshiping the sun on a sunrise service because the sun has passed over, and the Jews call it Passover, Christians call it resurrection. Wake up, it's just sun worship. And until such time as you understand that God does not have anything to do with ignorance, it has nothing to do with the pagantry and all the crap that we have been fed by government, religion, politics, church, and all of it. It's all manipulation. What we need to understand is that there is a divine presence in the universe that demands justice and demands intelligence. And that's what I'm here to do, to help people to understand, to get back in tune with the divine nature of the universe. And I believe that that's going to be required very soon, because when all the systems break down and the Christians for the first time begin to think about it, where is Jesus? I would have thought he would be back by now. You need to understand that there's a very powerful story in the New Testament that is telling us what God's thoughts are. But you need to understand it is symbolic, and there's a powerful story there. And one day, if I am invited back, I will do nothing more than for 4 hours do a whole theological discussion about the New Testament and the real story that's encoded in the New Testament, because I believe it's a very powerful story, but it's not the one you think it is. So consequently, my last comments are, I do not wish to offend, I wish to educate, because I believe that's what the divine presence in the universe would want, is truth. Know the truth and it will set you free. And I want to thank you. Oh, do we have any questions? And of course we do. Okay, let me get my mic. No. And remember, just because you got questions, that does not necessarily mean I can answer them. Oh, thank you.
Jordan, you've answered two two very important questions tonight. I now know what who Ohm refers to, O-M-M, in the movie THX 1138, who George Lucas very cleverly put in as the god of that whole society that they talked to and who they addressed. And I also now understand why there was a dome in the original Daystar story, and I now know why that was not allowed to ever make it to the screen. And you told me it probably wasn't ready, there was something missing. I now know what the dome means, and here I put it in there. I didn't even know what it meant. Right. Thank you. Now I want to ask you, till the Daystar shines.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what Peter meant when he wrote that?
And the Daystar rises in your heart. Peter said to continue until the Daystar rises in your heart. The word Daystar, Lucifer. Lucifer is the Daystar. Lucifer is nothing more than the planet Venus. Go look it up in Encyclopedia Britannica. Lucifer is Venus. And Lucifer, being Venus, was the light bringer. And the ancient Roman religion, that's actually based on the ancient Egyptian, just in the morning, the early morning, the priest in the city of On and all the ancient priests who were sun worshippers would go out at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 to 4, and face the east, and when they would see the planet Venus rising, it's a beautiful, if you've ever been up at 4 o'clock in the morning to see Venus, it's magnificent. It's a beautiful, bright sky and the light in the sky. And the ancient peoples realized that when you see that star rising, the sun is right behind it. So it announced the coming of the sun. So it was a beautiful announcer, for the sun was coming. And so it was called Lucifer. Lucifer was the bringer of the dawn, the bringer of the light, and it's called the day star. The day star is the star that brings the day, day star. Lucifer is nothing more than the planet Venus, period. Go look at any encyclopedia, go look up in any reference work, I don't care if it's Catholic, Protestant, any Bible reference work, it'll all tell you. All of them, they will tell you Lucifer is nothing more than the planet Venus. But it's highly symbolical, and it means something. It means that light is coming into the world. But the scripture says that the light came into the world, but the world was not worthy of it. Intellectual and spiritual enlightenment is trying to tell you something. And what happens when somebody is intellectually enlightened and trying to teach you something? If you're sleeping in bed and you're sound asleep in bed and someone lights up a 600-watt bulb next to you, the first thing you're going to do is turn away. Why? Because it hurts your eye. You don't want to see it. And then you're going to be mad that somebody did that to you and woke you up with a 600-watt bulb. Why? Because intellectually, someone who is brilliant, who's trying to enlighten you, and you've been sleeping all your life, you're going to be offended that somebody has now caused you to have to think and giving you enlightenment. So consequently, that's what we see all the time. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. Lucifer is nothing more than the day star that brings the day. And it's been misused and misunderstood.
Is there a virtuous day star?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Symbolically, there's a very powerful story in the symbolism of Lucifer, the day star, who brings the light of day. It's a very interesting and very important story, yes. We'll talk about it later.
I just want to thank you for all this symbolism, because I'm really into it because of my art background and Flower of Life. But I just wanted to ask you quickly about, I heard somebody mention on the radio about the Twin Towers, about Gemini. Something about the Gemini, the stars,
the twins.
Twins,
yeah, you saw
for the
that
Gemini,
the
and
twin
also
symbols.
9/11, huh?
Yeah, the twin phallic pillars too, I was showing you.
Yeah, right away I thought it said Twin Towers when you were showing all the phallic signs. But I wanted to know if you could add anything on to that, and also the 9/11.
Yes, I will say this, that we today in the Christian West believe that Astrology is all of the devil, and actually the word devil is nothing more than the D put in front of the word evil. You write evil and put a D in front of it, it becomes devil. Devil, evil, and God is actually taking one of the O's out of good, and it becomes God. God is good and devil is evil. It's just use of words. But in point of fact, there is a very powerful symbolism in this double phallic symbol. And so what I'm saying is that we've been given to believe and understand that astrology is evil, is of the devil and all that, and have nothing to do with it. Why? Because the church does not want you to discover the name of the tomb. The church does not want you to discover that for as far back as the human race goes, the kings, the rulers, the princes of the earth, all of the intellectuals, all of the most important people in the world know that the whole universe operates around the God's divine plan of the ages. It's astrology is from God. That's from the Bible. And consequently, until we have the proper respect for original astrological concepts, we're never going to figure out what these symbols mean and why we're in the trouble we are today. Astrology is a very powerful symbol. And it was used by the ancient Hebrews. It was used by the ancient Christians. And why do you think you have in the Bible, the Old Testament, the 12 brothers of Joseph, and the 12 tribes of Israel, and the 12 apostles? What are you talking about? 12, 12, 12. Why 12? It's the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 hours of day, the 12 hours of night. God's Son, that's why 13 is an unlucky number. God's Son, with his chosen 12, is a divine number in heaven, 13. So consequently, the whole of Western civilization is based, all religion is based on astrology. We just don't know that. And that's why the church has told you have nothing to do with it, because they don't want you to know the real truth. We need to understand astrology is the basis for all religions in the world.
And then the 9/11?
The 9/11, I could get into that too, but...
another time?
Yeah, another time, because it would require too much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is that my phone number is 505-9911. 9/11, that's my new phone number. 505-9911. 9/11. Anyway.
I just wanted to ask you if you had any comments on the red planet Mars, and if there was any symbolism to the fact it recently passed at its closest point to the planet Earth, and we're now in a war.
Yeah, let me say this. That opens up a whole can of worms, because I met many times, but I met up in Oakland. About 4 or 5 years ago, I met up in Oakland with about 8 other people. It was a secret meeting I was invited to. And for 3 days and 3 nights, we were all enclaved at the hotel. Richard Hoagland was there, Richard, myself, and there was 6 or 7 other people. And what we did is we paid for the restaurant in the hotel. We paid, all of us chipped in and paid for the particular table in the back of the restaurant for 3 days. We took it over and commandeered it for 3 days. And the idea is that the 8 or 10 of us, whatever it was, would sit there from morning till night and go through each other's work. Richard Hoagland sat right with me for 3 days and heard all of my material, heard it all. And we talked about Mars, and he divulged a lot of stuff that he's never talked about in public. And that was a very fascinating time. Incidentally, he went on Art Bell and was talking about all the Masonic symbolism at NASA and all that stuff. And that was my stuff. I'm the one that told him that. And I called him after I heard him on Art Bell. I called him and said, I told him, I said, Richard, it was great, sensational. I said, where'd you get all that information? Oh, well, I got it from you. I said, you got it from me? 3 hours I sat and listened to you on Art Bell. I didn't hear my name. Did I hear my name? I was wondering where you must have got that from. I thought we had an arrangement. What we said up there in San Francisco, up in Oakland, was not ever to be discussed in public, right? So I'm the one that brought David Icke to America, incidentally. So if you like David Icke, I'm the one that brought him here. If you don't, I'm the one that brought him here, and I'm not very happy about that. I'm very unhappy with David Icke. But anyway, huh?
Thank you.
Yeah, I brought David Icke to America, and I financed him to make him a star. I've seen the day he doesn't even talk to me, doesn't even say hello. But Mars, yeah, I think that there's a whole story about Mars that has not been told, and it's going to come out, that there might very well be life there now. Do you know that Tom Van Flander has a website, and he's one of the most legitimate, de jure, real physicists, plasma physicists in the world today, a very important man. And he has on his website pictures of artifacts on Mars's surface that I've never seen before. He's got pictures, actual zoomed-in pictures. And you got to remember, Tom Van Flanders is a very important man in the world of science today. And he's got pictures of cylinders on the face of Mars going into the Earth, into Mars and coming out. They're like a subway system, and it's like plastic or glass. And you can see the wrappings around, some kind of material wrapped around these cylinders. They must be huge. But they come out of the surface of Mars and go back in. They go behind huge mountains and come back out and go back down again. It looks like a subway system. And when you look at this thing, you tell, what the hell is a subway system doing on Mars? And in this article, he's saying that there are many things that NASA has known that's on Mars that they haven't told you yet. Subway systems, and this is very highly technical, the way he explained it, to be able to do what whoever this was that did it, to be able to build around mountains and sweep down into the ground, come back out over here, go around the mountain over here and come back in. Who knows how to build subway systems like that? And you can see through them. You can actually see through them. So they're either plastic or glass or plexiglass or something. I think that there's a lot more going on the planet Mars right now, and there may even be a civilization there now watching us. Maybe that's where we came from originally. I mean, I've sat with I sent Zachariah Sitchin around the world, I think 6, 7 times. I sent him to Egypt. I sent him to Mazatlan. I sent him to Turkey. I sent him to Israel. I sent him to Egypt. I sent Zachariah to 7 countries of the world. I did it personally. I sent him, and I was going to do a 13-week mini-series with Zachariah. And Zachariah is sensational. I love him. But I did a contract with Zachariah where my company in San Diego was going to finance a 13-week mini-series we were going to sell to PBS. And he agreed to do it. And we sent him to 7 different countries.